Just over a month ago, I covered a video that at the time I wasn't sure was actually going to become a series. Thankfully, after I released the video, Aquanza pretty much confirmed that Little Red was going to become a series, something I quickly updated my pin post to show. Since then, we've not yet had the tease Little Red's transfer to, but we have had a handful of other shorter videos to tide us over. And since at this point we've had 4, I should probably talk about them. And if you heard that and are now like Cyborg utility theorists, there are only 3 new videos in Little Reds from Aquanza Films, then I'm going to say this very quickly. Share the description of Count Your Years, just go do that now. I'll still be here once you've seen it. Anyway, I'll be covering Count Your Years first since it's just come out and that has the most I want to talk about. Then I'll try to cover everything else chronologically, which means the Pulling the Curtain video will be second, which incidentally Aquanza also gave me a shout out in, which thrilled me to no end. Also, if you've not yet watched my first video on Little Red's transfer, please go watch that first. Things might make more sense that way and I'll be trying to build upon the theories and speculation I made back then. Just as a warning, some of the stuff I'll be theorising about will be heavy subjects and might upset some people. I'll be discussing it as kindly as I can and drawing from some of my own experiences with depression and anxiety for the script, but keep in mind that it is in this video and I don't want to cause anyone upset by not forewarning you. So, let's crack on with the cartoon, Count Your Years. As before, let's start with a description of the video. The description is written again from the point of view of the uploader, saying that they got hold of some old Little Reds cartoons and have decided to post this one in particular since it's a New Year's special and this is New Year's Day. Except it technically wasn't in my time zone, but that's not important for this video. Anyway! The uploader says that they remember a few from their childhood, and they plan to post more cartoons up until they put out the next big Little Reds film. They even say they're going to be trying to edit together some old clips they're finding and thank us for being patient. They then share a writing prompt they wrote, now that I have an audience. Merry birthday. There was always something about Mary, whether it was the grease on her teeth or the confetti that stuck to her dress. She always had something eye-catching to someone. Today was Mary's birthday. She just got done unwrapping her final bottle of toothpaste before demanding to see her cake. Her mother ran out of the kitchen and placed the pan of broken up cookies and frosting on the wooden table. And before she could make a run for it, Mary shouted once more. Eat it, Mary said sternly. The mother held back tears as she went down on her knees to eat the mess of a cake. Mary's magnum breath lingered on her cheek. The mother ate as quickly as she could before falling to the ground limp and cold, and as expected the cake was filled with thousands of sharp pins. Mary let out a sigh of relief and gradated before taking a handful and resting her fingers in between her lips. Mary was happy. The cartoon starts in a living room with a television on the mantelpiece broadcasting scenes from 2 cartoons that will be familiar if you follow some of the other big ongoing series in the FNAF-inspired VHS horror community, or if you watch one of my last videos. A number of picture frames hang on the walls, but all seem to be blank. Sitting in an armchair on the right hand side is a brown bear, stylistically similar to images we saw of Little Red in Little Red's transfer. Subtitles appear at the bottom of the screen as he says, "It's that time of year again, oh no." The scene then changes to a Goose character who had been teased by Aquanza on his Twitter, and it's from there that we get her name, GallyGoosewelth. Gally seems to be washing dishes as she asks, "What's wrong, Lox? This year will be truly mesmerising." Which tells us that the bear character is indeed Lox, someone I speculated might be another one of the characters Elysian Plus had during my last video. She then continues to say that they deserve a break after all we've been through. Of note is that while the first scene was bright, from this scene on a dark cloudy border begins to creep in around the cartoon. Lox says that he knows, but tells her that she knows how much countdowns scare him. He then lists off the reasons as the large crowd of people, the loud cheering and screaming, and the fireworks. For each of these, the scene switches between Lox standing in the living room to a clock that resembles Little Red, eyes going back and forth as it ticks for the first 2 reasons, but still for the third. The first 2 reasons have the same audio of cheering people, but the third instead uses audio of what is a crowd celebrating as fireworks go off, but slowed down so it sounds an awful lot like a crowd being attacked by someone shooting a gun. The cartoon then skips forward to a few moments later as Gally continues to clean dishes. Little Red appears and tells Lox that they go through this every year, that after a simple 1, 2, 3 it'll all be over. Gally then says Red has a point, and that Lox should sit down and she'll make him some porridge and find him earmuffs so he won't be able to hear. There is then a knocking and the footage switches to Red and Lox, but the right hand side of the visuals are being stretched off the screen. The room around them is also darkened, and on screen the subtitles continue to flash the fireworks. We can also see that behind Lox's sprite there seems to be another rounded ear and a hat, of a character that seems to have been baked into the background as they do not move when Lox is, although the fact that Little Red is also not moving suggests to me that maybe it was where Lox was supposed to be in the scene, instead of his model being free floating as it is. We hear Gally saying that it looks like they have a guest, but the subtitles continue to flash the fireworks. We hear Red or Lox, I can't tell which, say that they've got the door, and hear someone opening the door although the scene doesn't change. We then switch over to the clock, who seems to have gained a mouth and a lower jaw to speak with in an echoey voice. As they speak, their eyes move much slower in their back and forth motion, and they say that they came as soon as they sensed a problem and thought they might have to find their own way inside. They then ask Lox if he is the bear who fears the sound, is scared of the trees and hides from the clouds. They say that the loudness is only making Lox sicker and that he needs only one more push to be due for the trigger. He then asks if Lox is ready for their assistance, referring to them as Golden Bear. Lox says he supposes so, but asks who the clock is, and the clock tells him never mind that and calls themselves Lox's teacher. He offers to teach the bear many things, many signs, many ways. He tells the bear to hang the rope and tells him not to be afraid and that in a second he'll be okay. He goes on to tell Lox that he's addicted, a mess, and so sick, and appears to pinpoint his addiction as the porridge. He proceeds to pour it down the sink as Lox tells him not to, but it's too late to stop the clock getting rid of his porridge. Lox asks why the clock did that, but the clock again tells him never mind and that he knows the bear is exhausted. The clock then suggests that the problem is Lox's friends, his eyes stopping their constant slow back and forth look to the right, and the clock suggests that they are toxic. We then get a scene close up to Gally's face, with the half of the shot she is not in shrouded in shadow and only the left side of her head visible as the right again stretches off to the side of the screen. She asks what the clock means, saying they are good friends, and then the image switches to Little Red in a similar dark background with his image stretching off to the left of the screen and Black Eyes, who protests that he and Lox are good buddies. For both of these shots there is no subtitling on the screen. The shot goes back to the clock as his eyes look all around, and it tells them that Lox knows what's going on, that both Gally and Little Red are trying to fill his head with poison. Lox asks what he should do, and the clock suggests dropping them, because they have no place here because of science. At this, Gally has had enough and asks the visitors to get out of their house as they are speaking nonsense. The shot again not subtitled and half of Gally's face stretched off to the side of the screen. Her eyes are wide and have the look of shrunken pupils, giving her the expression of someone about to snap. This image stays on screen, flashing slightly as the music behind the scenes starts to drag. The clock then asks Lox if he can see what the clock meant, that they try to be kind as they stare straight ahead. They then say something that sounds like, I am your ego and I hear the outside, then go on to say something like, I try to defend, I try it, I try, but you never let go, as the image switches to a crazy black pattern swirling around and hiding a still image that when taken slowly seems to be a kid's lunchbox with a pointy-eared animal character head on it. It could be Little Red or it could be someone different. The clock's voice then urges Lox to give it a try before what they're saying becomes overlaid over itself and is much harder to make anything out. The background of the lunchbox image turns red and then a tan colour. The pattern goes transparent and the background shows a face on either side of the darkened box screaming. Eventually the screen goes dark and then shows a still image of an animatronic missing its mask, slumped over to one side as the clock's overlaid voice continues. Then the swirling black pattern continues but over an image of what seems to be Lox standing in the living room area. Eventually there is a loud bang like a gunshot and we get a brief flash of this image of Lox stood in the living room. All black lines and white colour, and eyes empty except for something white. As strange and surreal as this cartoon seems to be, I do think there's enough here to make a guess about what it's trying to tell us. Starting first with the description of this video, it seems to have been written by someone different from the person who found the half-done transfer we watched last time. While the person uploading Little Red's transfer seemed confused and even a little unnerved by what they'd discovered, this description is full of excitement for what they found. This person also says that they are actively seeking out clips and are planning to upload more cartoons, as well as edit together other short clips they found. This could possibly mean that we're dealing with more than one person showing us these clips, something supported by the fact that we know that there were 4 employees of Illusion Plus looking for stuff on the incident from Little Red's transfer. While I don't think the upload of transfer was one of these 4, but may be related to Ivan, there is a possibility that the person uploading this cartoon could be Eric, Tonya or JJ. My bet is more on it being either Tonya or JJ, as we know that Ivan and Eric at least had measures in place to be secretive about what they were doing, but don't yet know that for the other 2. Of course, the uploader could be someone unconnected to these 4, but I thought I'd put out the possibility of a connection just in case. As for the writing part of it, Mary seems to be a person who is presented as being noticeable for all the wrong reasons. The fact that he mentions final bottle of toothpaste makes it sound like a lot of people gifted her toothpaste on her birthday, and it does previously mention grease on her teeth, which doesn't paint a very kind mental image of Mary in looks. The cake she gets for her birthday is also less a cake and more cookies crumbled and covered in icing, which makes us feel like whoever made it was either in a rush, couldn't afford a cake, or maybe didn't care enough to get her one. The toothpaste gifts also suggest either a lack of funds on the parts of parents or a lack of care. However, Mary then demands her mother eat the cake as her mother tries to escape. It mentions that the mother does so on her knees with Mary's magnum breath on her, suggesting that Mary made her mother eat this cake with a gun held to her. The cake turns out to be full of pins, which kills the mother and pleases Mary. Taken as a whole, this piece of writing makes us see Mary as someone unattractive, demanding and cruel. I'm also unsure if the use of the word gradated was intentional or a typo, because gradated means to shift between gradations, so I'm trying to work out what it might have been supposed to have said. Regardless of that, I'm still trying to figure out what it all means, so let's just move on to the video itself, because that's probably what you're here for. Firstly, this video introduces us to two more characters in the Little Red world. We have Gally, and we have Lox, the latter of which I'd already speculated could be another one of Little Red's friends. Lox here appears in a form different from the one we saw in the previous video, resembling Little Red a lot more in design. There is of course the possibility that the bear we saw in the previous video was not in fact Lox, but someone else entirely. We learn a little more about their personalities, but mainly Lox's. Gally seems to be the mature, almost motherly figure of this group, as we see her doing the chores by washing the dishes in this video, as well as saying she will provide Lox his porridge and find him earmuffs to block out the noises. Lox is presented as a bear who is scared of the world around him, mainly the loud noises and crowds of people, but the clock also speaks as if he is afraid of much more than that. Speaking of the clock, it is mainly the things that they say that has led me to my theory about what this cartoon means. The way they speak makes me think that the clock is either a therapist, or much more likely represents a voice inside of Lox's head. Noticeably, when Lox is recalling the noises which he hates so much, the scene always switches over to the clock, which could represent Lox hearing it in his mind. The clock also seems to at one point call themselves Lox's ego, which would suggest that they are a part of him, and the way they talk to Lox is reminiscent of how someone would put themselves down negatively. They talk about Lox being addicted, and the porridge that Gally has made for them seems to be the addictive thing that Lox has been using to cope so far, but the clock makes Lox get rid of it. They then set Lox against his friends, who as far as we see in this video are nothing but supportive to him and just want to help him cope. This is just like how many people who are depressed will begin to distance themselves from their friends, eventually leaving themselves without a support network to lean on. We get a hint that Lox and the others might have had a bad time of late, as Gally says that they deserve a break with a new year starting, so the bear being in a bad state of mind isn't out of the question. To further the idea that the clock represents a voice in Lox's head, when they begin to repeat many things over and over, most of it gets indecipherable under each other, but there is a section at the end of it which, if you reverse, you can make out a little bit. For the sake of warning, this is a bit loud, so be prepared.
I am your ego. I fear the unconscious. Now I try to be kind. I am your ego.
Among the phrases you can make out are I try to be kind, I hear you, and I fear, with something else after it that's drowned out. However, the most prominent part is the bit at the beginning of the reverse part, or the end if it's being played as it was in the actual video. We hear the clock's voice repeating you see it over and over, and behind him we hear what sounds like a man crying. This almost feels like a madness mantra inside someone's head, when they can't silence their bad thoughts and are being overwhelmed by them, yet at the same time feel that the negative voice in their head is the only one telling them the truth about how things really are. The clock also tells Lox that he only needs one push to be due the trigger, which suggests that they know how close Lox is to snapping, even if the bear seems okay, and also suggests to hang the rope and that he'll be okay in a second. Both this and the trigger thing seem to almost be references to suicide, as hang the rope could be talking about a noose, something we've already seen in Little Red's transfer, and due the trigger could be talking about shooting themselves to death, and we hear what seems to be a gunshot end the video. For these reasons, I think that what this cartoon is doing is telling us the tale of someone in this story. Someone who is being represented by Lox the golden bear. Whoever it was depressed and maybe addicted to something that they used to stave it off as a result. It's worth noting at this point that during the ending animation of Little Red's transfer, we do see Lox pointing at not only a door, but something else that I couldn't identify before. However, with the new information, it seems likely that they are empty porridge bowls, and there are a lot of them in this shot, which does suggest that Lox and the person they represent truly had an addiction to something. This person might have had good friends or family around them that tried to help them as best they could, but in the end, this person succumbed to the voice in their head who put them down and potentially ended their life as a result. I think there's also a possibility, given the emphasis put on the fireworks during the cartoon, that this person could have some sort of post-traumatic stress disorder brought on by gunshots or something similar, maybe a former soldier. As this relates to the greater story though, I think that this person might have worked for or been connected to the older location in which the incident took part. At one point when the video references fireworks, the sound of the crowd and the bang of the fireworks are slowed down to the point that you could mistake it for someone shooting a gun into a crowd, as I did on first viewing. This person could have not only shot themselves dead, but did it within a Little Red and in the middle of a crowd, potentially taking other victims with him. The newspaper article from Little Red's transfer tells us that something happened at a birthday party, so potentially the one more push this person needed was being in the midst of a crowd of happy, loud, screaming children, and they snapped. The newspaper article also contains a picture of what looks like a bear, which could mean that this person was associated with Lox in some way, which would make sense of why the bear is being used to represent them here. This cartoon could possibly be telling us in a roundabout way what the incident actually was. Maybe. This video was one made by Aquanta to show us some of the process he went through to make the first Little Red's tape, mainly how certain designs changed over the development time and how certain concepts came about, just in case you were interested to see how much thought can go into one of these videos, which I am. The video starts with a title card stating that it is a behind the scenes look at the Little Red's transfer making, including the slogan, "You've got red." There is then a screen where Aquanta gives me a shout out for my last video, which means an awful lot to me and I can't thank him enough for that. He then also goes on to thank the viewers for their interest and the opportunity to share his art with them. The majority of this video is a series of segments demonstrating how elements of Little Red's transfer came about, each with its own card to tell us what it will be showing us and accompanied with a little red head. We start with how the introduction evolved over time. This includes some shots of different copyright warning screens, as well as showing us other potential names for the company behind Little Red, Collide Entertainment and Select Design Initiative. We also see previous training tape title cards that suggest the tape could have been from 1970, 1980 or 1986 instead of 1988 as was decided in the final video. We also see that some of the logos are marked Little Red's Frozen Custard before becoming Little Red's Bowling and Arcade, which seems to suggest that I was correct about speculating Little Red's was a place with a bowling alley at least. Don't know if the Frozen Custard thing stuck around, the progression seems to suggest it didn't, but we'll see in time. The second segment is on how the Toon Little Red evolved and was created, and we see a number of visuals of scrap screens for the video that include drawn Little Reds, including 2 You've Been Chosen screens and 1 for the first section of the transfer tape. We then see a number of the Little Reds who did make the cuts into the video. We then move on to the third section, which shows us the inspirations for Little Reds, which include Five Nights, the Rockafire Explosion Band, Gemini Home Entertainment, both Battington and Martin Walls, and childhood. Because nothing's scarier than being little and not quite understanding what this new thing is in front of you. We also get to see the Mario poses referenced for some of the smaller cartoon Little Red we saw at the end of the last video, and then an image of Rolf the Wolf surrounded by hearts. I think we can tell who Aquanta's favourite is. During this section around 3:22, taking things frame by frame, we can catch a glimpse at another image being overlaid. Unfortunately, it's very hard to make anything substantial out. Only this part here gives me any sort of clues and makes me think this is either part of a logo or maybe some other drawn graphic or visual. Moving on to the fourth section, we now take a look at the applications of Little Reds. This is basically a segment where Aquanta shows on screen the various programs that he used to make the video, predicting that he'd probably get at least someone curious as to what he used to do it. The fifth segment is for extras, things that probably didn't fit into one of the other segments. These include a background for the Frozen Custard incarnation, A clear look at the 1969 logo we saw at the end of Transfer with a frozen custard background behind it, an image of a 1969 diner location, a photo of a little red animatronic on a stage by himself used for one of the Golden Facts photos, a little red logo over a background that is very donut. One of the images I showed at the end of my last video that had been put on Twitter, which was also used as a Golden Facts photo, a photo of a donut with a cartoony face on it, part of a graphic for what looks to be an advert for Day Glazed Donuts Coast to Coast, and then suddenly we see a familiar video viewing unavailable screen, the text flashing as the music suddenly warps. Again, there is a brief flash of an image, this time one of a pixelated 8-bit computer display. The screen goes dark, then a test card comes up before we see a final segment title slide. The red on screen is now blood splattered and no longer winking, staring straight ahead. The segment's title is in Morse code and when translated reads, "Where is Ivan Carpenter?" The music suddenly stops at this point before we get a rewinding sound, then a load of overlaid sounds, some of which sound like talking reversed. Unfortunately, trying to switch the audio around doesn't help as the overlaid sound makes it very hard to decipher any words. We see on screen some of the images we've seen in the past sections. One on animatronic interface, one of the FBI copyright screens, one of the scrapped training tape segment slides, the 1969 logo at least twice, a "You've Been Chosen" image, the 1970 training tape title card, and one of Illusion Plus's logos. We also see the Fantastic Birthday Parties text from Transfer's advert, along with further text saying games, rides, and fun, 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 and freshly made meals. And a quick zoom over of the image of the computer terminal from the part of Transfer's tape that talks about receiving tasks in an envelope. There's also a segment where it seems dark, but in the top left hand side of the screen you can just about make out some text, which I think ends with the word fun, and can just about see something central moving around. Finally, the video flashes up a white and black image, the right side with the image of the blood-splattered redhead, and the text on the side cut off. However, we've seen this image before. This is part of the newspaper cutting we see during Ivan's second message. The wording of the article we can see now talks about all the lights in the facility being switched off, calls something unbearable, and talks about following a trail of candies and confetti. As this is a behind the scenes video, there's really not much to analyse, but there are some guesses we can make as to what we might see in future videos from what was shown, especially with the last segment. From the second flash of overlaid image, we can see that something 8-bit will probably be coming up in future videos, especially since Aquanta also teased this similar but different image before on their Twitter and pretty much confirmed it was an animatronic terminal. This could mean we will see movement testing playing a part somewhere, either as a simple movement test video or having there be some reference to it made. We could also maybe see some of the scrapped elements come back somewhere else. Maybe Frozen Custard as a product that Illusion Plus tried at some point, or maybe Collide or Select Design as companies they collaborate with. I also find it weird that of all the cut-in adverts from the first video, only Dayglaze seems to have any extra things associated with it shown in this video. Could Dayglaze be a much larger part of Little Reds in future too? We also get a few more hints about the incident from the brief zoomed-in glance we get at part of the newspaper cutting. We now know that lights in the facility were switched off, and something left a trail of candies and confetti that was followed. And to finish, and just as an aside, at the start of the video a slowed down version of a song played which when sped up and typed some lyrics into Google gave me the song "Tain't No Sin", which is about taking off your skin when it's too hot and dancing around in your bones. I don't think the song is literal, but as always, every detail that might later become relevant with context I'll point out. This is VHS horror after all. Finally, I'm going to cover the two of the videos I want to talk about at once, as both are pretty short and therefore I have a little less to say on them. Enough so that I feel it's better to talk about them in the same section together. Corruption Tape is a short little video that Aquanta released just before Christmas, and on the surface shows merely a severely corrupted, under a minute long clip of a cabin surrounded by snow. However, taking this video frame by frame reveals there's actually a number of subtitles appearing on the screen, which seem to be addressing someone. Maybe the person taking this footage, or watching it. You strayed quite far this time, didn't you? Shh, don't worry. Welcome back home. Now why don't you come inside? You've never done well in the cold. I've noticed that for about a second halfway through the tape, the image changes to one of a photo outside, and at least one comment points out that there's a creature in it. I can't make it out clearly though. It also seems, as the tape goes on, their cabin gets more and more buried in the white, although that could just be a consequence of the corruption affecting the tape. I think, like the Merry Birthday piece of writing, this tape is missing the context needed to clarify just what is going on. This almost feels more like one of Aquanta's surreal horror pieces he's done besides Little Red's, but the title of the video clearly marks it as being part of the Little Red's tapes. The tape is talking to someone, inviting them in, saying they've never done well in the cold, but just who is talking and to whom, and what is this supposed creature? This tape comes with a description from the uploader that apparently their mother used to love these songs from Gally and the Little Red's cartoons, asking someone called Arthur to turn them up. The description also mentions that the cartoon would play on Sunday mornings. The video itself starts with a still from the Count Your Years cartoon of Gally, while some slowed down audio plays. Obviously I clipped it out in Audacity and discovered that it wasn't only slowed, the middle section was reversed too. So after speeding it up about 75%, cutting out the middle and flipping it around, and then normalising it to try and remove a little of the distortion, this is what I was left with.
I found it at the older place. Why did they hide it? Do you think you can understand it? No. Not him. We don't take him anywhere, unfortunately. His family doesn't seem to be too fond of him, yes. I don't know. Hold on.
The clip then continues with an image of a photo of a duck or goose dancing around a green field to slightly peaking music. And besides that, only one unusual thing happens. A truck appears behind the bird at 48 seconds for a few frames before vanishing. This truck has the same colour bars we've previously seen on the test card in Pulling the Curtains, as well as being the colours associated with Illusion Plus. Again, this clip seems very out of context, but the slowdown audio at the start at least tells me something even if it's disconnected from the wider narrative right now. From the sounds of it, the audio is an exchange between a teacher and someone they're trying to teach. This does have echoes of the teacher relationship Clock said they had with Lox in Count Your Years, but at the same time it feels different. While it's hard to tell who is speaking because of the clip's slowdown, the voice is higher pitched than with Lox or the clock. This and the fact that this is a Gally video makes me think that at least one of the speakers must be Gally or connected to her, maybe even a young child who is a fan of the character because of the part that sounds like homework. What that means though, I'm unsure as of yet. For now, a lot of the questions I had about Little Reds remain unanswered, but a few possibilities have now emerged. There is a possibility that the incident had something to do with a gun, and something to do with someone connected to Lox who had a breakdown. There could also be someone connected to the Gally character who is either teaching or being taught at some point, and this is important somehow. As before and ever, the mystery of Little Reds continues to deepen, and we are left with plenty more questions to ask. Like, just where is Ivan? Ivan Carpenter, who led us through Little Red's transfer. What happened to him? And where is he now?